more. Wow. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Empowered to Live, the place where faith meets purpose and purpose fuels freedom. I am your host, Andrea, and today we are in part two of our series, Coming Back from a Setback. And last week we talked about what happens when life doesn't go as planned or as we hope. And today we're going to talk about what comes next. After disappointment that we face, we have a choice to make. Will we stay where we are or will we start to rebuild? And starting over isn't easy, but it can be done. And I am a witness that it can happen, that you can start over, you can rebuild again, you can come back from a setback. I've had to do it several times. And so I know what it takes to do that. And I did it. You can do it too. And it's not an easy work to come back, especially when you face great disappointments, when you've been discouraged, and when you feel like all your hopes and your dreams have been shattered and you're trying to come back, but it is possible. And today our anchor scripture is from Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 18, and it says that I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me, and they replied, let us start rebuilding. And so they began this good work. And so, many even may know the story of Nehemiah, when Jerusalem was destroyed and their hopes had been dashed and they had been in captivity. And Nehemiah received word that, the city needed to be rebuilt. And so he goes to the king, and the king gives him, everything that he needed to start rebuilding the temple over. And in that rebuilding, he faced opposition. There were people who came to him and said, "Why are you trying to rebuild? It doesn't make sense. Is this going to be destroyed again?" And sometimes, in our own lives, when we try to rebuild, we may have people in our lives who said, "What's the point?" Or you may even say to yourself, "I failed before, so what's the point?" But the point is that we were created for more, and you're not created to stay in that space that you were in. And like we talked about last week, sometimes we get stuck because our hope is deferred, or our hopes and our dreams have been shattered. But God wants us to rebuild. He is the God of new beginnings, and He will do just what He said He would do. And so when we are feeling disappointed and discouraged, it causes us to doubt ourselves. We question God. God, did you tell me to do this? No. God, I trusted you. Why did this happen to me? And all of these things that we ask ourselves in those moments of disappointment, in those moments of grief. And it's okay for us to have those feelings. It's okay for us to feel the way that we feel. Our emotions are real and we can own them. But like I said over and over again, don't get stuck in that space where we stay there and we hold a pity party for way longer than we need to. We can cry, we can grieve, and we can and grieving again is a cycle, because you may have good days and then you go right back and you that party starts all over again. And then you have better days, but the time between them gets less and less as we continue to grow, we continue to move, we continue to trust God. In that old season, we learn the lessons that we need to learn, and we continue to move on. And so when we are in that place when we are disappointed or discouraged, we can again stay. We can feel defeated, and the enemy will tell you, yeah, what's the whole point of trying again? And so when we rebuild, we can stop focusing on what we have lost. start putting our energy in what is still possible, what we're creating. I think I shared this last week. And when we think about what's possible, what is possible, and and many of y'all know, I've had issues with walking for the past almost 2 years, year and a half, something like that. And until we got to the point now where I need the surgery, which is going to be tomorrow. So y'all continue to pray for me. And as I was thinking about this, and yeah, there's that, that moment of fear that is there, especially, you're going to face certain surgeries. It's an uncertain thing. You don't know what's going to happen, but, and I trust God, but there's fear there. There's that whole disappointment of, why did this happen? I thought I was doing all the right things, but then we end up in this space where here I am. But I shared, my daughter, my oldest daughter, did a 5K a couple of weekends ago, and I said to her, and we were talking, and I said to her, that's gonna be me and you next year. I'm gonna be out there with you. I said I may not run it, but I'm sure gonna try to walk it. And and so I was giving myself hope of what is possible, because yes, I can't walk, you know, down the street without getting weak, and my leg doesn't want to do leg stuff. But my hope is not in where I am right now. My hope is that what is possible through Christ, not in my strength, not in my own thing, but through Him. And so my focus, my energy is on, yes, I'm here. This is my current reality. And we talked about that as well. Owning our current reality. My current reality is this is where I am. The current reality is also the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know who holds on to my future. He's already written the days of my life in this book, and he tells me that he has a good plan for me. And so I trust him in that, even though there is uncertainty and there is no clarity for me, but I still trust him. And so my energy is not in the worrying and in anxiety, even though my body sometimes will tell me that, yes, I was up last night, I could not sleep, and I was like, Lord, what is going on? But God, I still trust you, even though, the flesh is saying anxiety is here, fear is here, but I still trust him. And my plan is to rebuild my life, and to continue on to do the work that God has called me to do. And so that's where my energy is. So I don't need to rebuild all at one time. I know there's going to be physical therapy. I know there's going to be occupational therapy. I know there's going to be days where I'm going to be discouraged again. And that may be you, where you are in this space where you feel like I thought I went further along. I thought this was going to happen. This was my plan, and I'm not there. I thought I was going to get that promotion. I thought it was going to happen. And you're in this space right now where maybe you're feeling like you have to relearn and redo. And you figure I'm too old to do all of these things, but you're never too old in God's plan for you. And so take it one step at a time, and recognizing that you're not going to have to do it all over and over again. I always think, of Dr. King's, message, and this always comes to me, even this state that I'm in right now. He says, if you can't walk, crawl, and so if we have to crawl our way into rebuilding, then that's what we have to do. We're going to crawl our way into rebuilding to getting where we need to be. So focus in on taking the next step, rebuild as you can, keep your faith, be patient with yourself, be consistent, and be encouraged. Look at all the people who have gone before you. Look at your past where you may have had to rebuild before, and now you're in this space, and when you look back, you was like, I never thought, but look at you now. Look at you now. And so be encouraged in that you have come a long way, and you will continue to grow, and you continue to move as long as you don't cause yourself to be stuck. Just focus in on what is not. focus in on what is still possible. You're still able to create. The walls of Jerusalem had been completely torn down, and it was decimated. It took thousands of craftsmen to build the temple, to build the wall. When Nehemiah came, there wasn't that many as was there, but he said, I will stay on this wall. I will not come down until I get it done, until this wall has been rebuilt, even when he faced opposition, and you will too. And that needs to be your cry. I will stay on this wall. I will continue to build until it's complete, until you walk in your purpose. So don't be discouraged. It happens. Discouragement will come. Don't compare your journey and to anyone else. There's something that I say over and over again. We get so discouraged and we become disappointed and disillusioned when we look at somebody else's race and we compare ourselves. And this when we trip ourselves up because we aren't focusing on our own journey. We're looking at somebody else's journey, and we don't know what they've had to endure to get them to the place that they're in. So we need to fix our eyes on us in our lane, stay in our lane, and walk and do what we know we're supposed to do, what we are called to do, and rebuild, our lives the way that God requires us to build, and not worrying about somebody else. And again, don't be afraid to try again. You know, I pray that God give you confidence to get up and to build and to rebuild and to grow and continue to keep moving. And so focusing on the progress that you're making. What progress have you already made? Not looking for perfection. We talked about that the other day. Last month, we talked about perfection. God is not looking for us to be perfect. He's looking for us to be faithful and taking those faithful steps. And remember, again, to celebrate the progress that you have made. Every achievement, every goal, celebrate the wins that you have. You got up out of bed this morning, then that's a victory for somebody. You were able to make your own food. That's victory. You have food. That's something to celebrate. You have a job. You still have life. And as long as we are still breathing, God's plan is still in progress, and you are in progress. And so don't become discouraged. And so take a moment to notice what God is doing. Take a moment to look at what you have already achieved. And, I'm born from the old folks, and I'm one of them. When this is when I think about the goodness of Jesus and all that He has already done for me, then I can't help but rejoice. And so when we look back over the victories that we've already come through, when we look back at the places again that could have devastated you, but you're still here, you're still standing. Celebrate those, remember those moments, and rejoice in those moments that you have, and stay connected to your faith community. Stay committed and connected to those who are going to encourage you and speak life into you, and not ones who are going to say, yeah, if I was you, I would do, and I don't know how. Those are not who you don't want. Those dream stealers. You don't want those people in your life, and we need to limit the access they have to us. And you want to surround yourself with people who are going to call you into strength, and not the ones who are going to speak to your weakness and tell you, no, you don't have to get up out of bed if you don't want to. You know, the ones that, that's old song that says, it's my party, I can cry if I want to. No, you can cry, but then wash your face and get up and get moving. Walk into the purpose of which you were called, knowing that you're not doing this by yourself. You are given strength. There are people, you are surrounded by people who want to encourage you, who want to speak life into you. And if you need somebody to do that, I'm telling you before, hit my website up, book a consultation call with me, or just say, you know what, I just need to talk. And let's do that. Let's have a conversation about how do we rebuild, how do we come back when our life has been devastated. And I'm gonna say I'm the comeback queen. And I'm gonna keep coming back until the Lord says it's time for you to come home. I want to keep coming back, regardless of what setbacks or adversity comes. And I want that for you too. And so I'm empowering you with courage to be one who will come back from every setback, and you're going to come back stronger than ever before. And so that is my encouragement for you. And so as we wrap up, for my writers, my journalers, what are you trying to rebuild right now? And what strengths have you found in yourself because of this setback? So, what are you trying to rebuild? Are you trying to rebuild financially? Is it professional wise, relationships? What are you trying to rebuild? And in the process of this setback, what lessons have you learned that you can use, and how can you see progress in your life right now? Because you've made progress. You got up this morning, that is progress. And so celebrate that. And for our weekly challenge, I want you to choose one area of your life you'd like to make better. And this week, try taking one practical step and work on it. Take one step and work on it. It doesn't have to be something big, one small step. Maybe for you, it is getting up out of bed and shaking the dust off, taking a shower. Whatever that is for you, whatever that one step is to lead you back to rebuilding the life that God created for you from the beginning, that life hit you sideways and took you by surprise, and now you're trying to get back up. Take that one step in this week to do that. And when you rebuild, it shows that hope is still alive, that you are still alive, and hope is alive, that God is still at work. He is not finished. He is working everything together for good, for your good, and for His glory. And so He wants you to rebuild. And so He will encourage you in that. And so next week, we're going to be talking about trusting God in the recovery process, because you will recover. You're going to be like David. He's like, should I pursue? And the Lord says, go and recover all. And so you're going to go recover all as you rebuild. So I want to thank you all for joining me on this episode of Empowered to Live, where women are empowered to live, encouraged to heal, and inspired to become. So until next time, see you all next week. Have a great one. Good night.